In the 1930s, Europe was a place that was being gripped by nationalism. Many countries were in economic turmoil and still feeling the consequences of World War I. As time wore on, it became clear that the World War I peace settlement was far from successful. Joseph Stalin took control of Russia in 1924, following the death of Vladimir Lenin. He put into place his 5-year economic plans and transformed Russia into the second largest industrial nation by 1937. He was a ferocious dictator who eliminated both those who opposed him or challenged his power in what became known as Stalin's Purge. The exact number of people who were killed remains unknown, but most historians claim it to be around 8 million. By 1939, Russia was a totalitarian government controlled by only Joseph Stalin. Fascism rose to popularity in Italy in the 1920s. Fascism stressed nationalism and placed the importance on the state above those of the individual. Benito Mussolini founded the Fascist Party in 1921 and rose to popularity quickly. In October of 1922, Mussolini marched on Rome with thousands of his black shirt followers. When important government officials, the police, and the army all sided with the fascists, the king relinquished control of the government. Calling himself Il Duce, Mussolini would go on to rule all aspects of Italian life, creating a totalitarian state. Nowhere was there more discontent among the people than in Germany. The Treaty of Versailles had placed harsh economic restrictions on the country, which led to inflation and unemployment. The treaty also banned Germany from raising an army, which was a blow to nationalistic pride. In 1919, Hitler joined a political party, the National Socialistic German Workers, known as the Nazis. He quickly rose to power through his impassioned and nationalistic speeches. He wrote a book while in jail titled Mein Kampf, which translates to My Struggle, where he outlined the German brand of fascism and called for the unification of German-speaking people split by the Treaty of Versailles. He also called for racial purification and his ideas of the ideal Aryan race. By 1932, the Nazis were the strongest political power in Germany, which led to Hitler being elected Chancellor in January of 1933. Once he was Chancellor, he quickly dismantled the Weimar Republic and established a new government known as the Third Reich, or the Third German Empire. In the years prior to our involvement in World War II, the United States was still not in great shape and very much still trying to put itself back together following the Great Depression. The United States and the Roosevelt administration were focused on making sure that domestic issues were under control and not focusing on the threat that was rising in Europe. From 1937 to 1941, the United States really did try to actively stay out of World War II. At the beginning of the conflict, the United States did maintain a strong foreign policy of isolationism and even supported the policy of appeasement set forth by Neville Chamberlain in 1938. In 1939, Congress passed the Neutrality Acts that had a cash-and-carry provision that allowed warring nations to buy United States arms and supplies as long as they paid for cash and also provided transport for the purchased goods. However, as Hitler and the Germans conquered more and more territory, it was clear that ultimately the United States could not remain completely neutral. In September of 1940, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed a mutual defense treaty forming the Axis powers. Furthermore, as nations such as France fell under Nazi occupation in 1940, and with Hitler turning his sights on Great Britain, the United States had to start thinking about amending our foreign policy. While the United States was not involved in the conflict yet, Roosevelt did still increase spending on defense, and he also initiated the first peacetime draft. Seacoast defenses were beefed up around the United States in areas like the San Francisco Bay Area. Minefields were stretched across the bay to prevent enemy attacks, and the Bay Area had new batteries that were created that would house the largest guns in the United States arsenal. Batteries like Battery Townsley in the Marin Headlands were constructed to safeguard the bay against attack. These batteries could fire a 2,600-pound shell, which is the equivalent of a Volkswagen Bug, up to 25 miles out to sea. In 1940, FDR ran for re-election for an unprecedented third term. Roosevelt had been the face of the government during our toughest economic test, and now he was elected to be the face of the government during what was looking like one of our greatest military conflicts in history. By 1940, Britain was running out of cash, making it hard to buy arms under the cash and carry policy the United States had put into place. So in March of 1941, Roosevelt and Congress passed the Lend-Lease Act. This act gave the president the ability to lend or lease United States arms and supplies to countries whose defense was seen as vital to the United States. The act created a clear alliance between Great Britain and the United States, and while it was denounced by isolationists, it was supported by most Americans. Britain was not the only country to benefit from the Lend-Lease Act. After Hitler invaded the Soviet Union in 1941 and broke the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, the United States also sent supplies to aid the Soviet Union. Hitler retaliated against the Lend-Lease program by dispatching hundreds of German U-boats to disrupt supply lines in the Atlantic. German U-boats would form wolf packs, groups of up to 40 U-boats that would patrol the Atlantic at night, sinking ships. These wolf packs were extremely successful and could sink up to 350,000 pounds of supplies each month. In August of 1941, Franklin Delano Roosevelt would meet with British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. While Churchill was hoping for a military commitment from the United States, he settled for the passing and signing of the Atlantic Charter, an agreement on war aims for World War II. Both countries claimed collective security, disarmament, self-determination, economic cooperation, and freedom of the seas were the goals of the war. At the meeting, Roosevelt told Churchill that he could not ask Congress for a declaration of war, but he would wage war on his own terms and do whatever he could do to force an incident. The meeting and the passing of the Atlantic Charter led to the basis of what would soon become known as the Allies. To combat the growing nuisance of U-boat attacks in the Atlantic and possibly force the incident he desired to draw the United States into war, Roosevelt ordered Navy commanders to shoot on German U-boats on sight. 2 weeks after his order, 3 United States ships were fired upon by German U-boats, leading to U.S. casualties. With tensions growing and American lives lost, a formal declaration of war seemed inevitable. However, the attack that would catapult the United States into World War II came from another one of the Axis powers. The attack on Pearl Harbor by the Empire of Japan led to the deaths of 2,600 Americans and severely damaged our Pacific Fleet. The attack by the Empire of Japan, along with the tensions of the German U-boats, coupled with our alliance with Great Britain, led Congress to approve a declaration of war on the Axis powers and led to the United States formally entering World War II.